ccmmagazine.com live. And so kind of a cool, kind of a crazy day. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. Mari, who is supposed to be on the show today, is in the Amazon, like literally in the Amazon. It's one of those things where you can't really predict that, like unless you could. We don't know. I don't know what what happened there, but she's doing awesome stuff over there. And Mari is, of course, a co-host of CCM's various interviews and lifestyle type stuff. She's got the great fashion. We're going to have her on here eventually. But we have you, and we're very excited that all of you are watching. Please post comments. I will be watching them today. Oh, and my mom's watching. Hi, Mom. And if you are here, hit share, hit if you scroll down on that share deal, you can find individual people. You can invite them as well. We're going to talk Christian rock, and of course, fans are very passionate about their rock. Mary and I have worked together a long time. This is Mary Nikkel. She's running a new website called Rock on Purpose because she is a rock head and she's been into Christian rock pretty much all her life. And so we're going to talk to her about her new venture, and we're going to talk just about Christian rock. So one thing we've learned, Mary, is just that people, like, it's one of the most passionate fan bases in all of music is the rock world.
Absolutely. Like,
And
I think people,
yeah,
they don't get enough credit, really.
yeah, and they do so like passionately, but then most people have no idea, that the fan bases are as big and as voracious as they are.
Yeah.
You've been how did you get into rock music? Like you grew up actually in a home where it was kind of just, not like rock was sort of, I don't know about this music, and yeah, how'd
Yeah.
you get
I
into it?
grew up in well, coming from the cliche stereotyped rock is the devil's music kind of world, it was a kind of like a slow entry for me, but the internet was a magical thing. YouTube started when I was a teenager. I was like in the ground floor of YouTube. I had one of the
Yeah,
like, early accounts, which were super awkward and
yeah.
clunky at the time. And then I was also on MySpace, and I had some friends who had a Reliant K song, Be My Escape, specifically as their MySpace, like it would play. And the first time I heard it, I was like ashamed of how much I liked it, but I was also like, I really like this. And so then I started
That's
like,
awesome.
the YouTube related videos. Like I started finding them, and I was stunned by some of the things they were talking about because they were things that I had never heard talked about in Christian circles before. So really it was a message that hooked me, even though initially some of the sounds were really foreign to me. But the lyrics were just unbelievable to me. Bands like Skillet, Red, Reliant K, Flyleaf, Disciple, those were kind of like my first entry points. And then, got harder and harder to Under Oath, Demon Hunter, and it was kind of like unending cycle from there.
Oh man, that's awesome. Reliant K, was you said that was one of your first ones?
That was my very first, was Reliant K. That was my gateway drug.
Yeah, and so now you look back, you're like, wow, Reliant. I'm not even sure if Reliant K is rock. Like,
Well, exactly. Now, especially like they've kind of gone this indie direction, but in the day they were heavy, man. It was like anything with guitars was heavy. So
yeah. And of course you've got great relationship with a lot of artists now, including Disciple and the As We Ascend guys. Um, what are you seeing like happening in the rock world? I mean, for a time we had this terrible identity crisis where a lot of these bands were doing like pop EDM stuff, but
it was a hard time.
has that passed? Do you think?
I think it has. And I think a big part of why is because it's like this. The big thing I've been telling people I see with Christian rock in 2018 is that there's kind of a reunification happening where you see a lot of bands, now rock bands have been more or less jettisoned from your typical label system, right? And they've been independent. But now, kind of like since that shift has blown over, they're finding ways to unify within their independence. Or you have
Mm,
situations like Rockfest Records, where Seventh Day Slumber has actually started a label to collect some of these bands who got scattered. So there's this huge kind of like family element that's always existed in that world, but it's coming into play even more where now it's impacting business models in a really like strong way, like I would say more than ever before. So because of that, with the support system growing and that unification growing, bands like Firefly can come back and do rock and have a support network there, and Nine Lashes can come back and do rock and have a support system there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's a really exciting time to be a part of it.
Well, that's I'm glad that some of these bands got that out of their system, and that
Yeah.
you know what I think is cool is that rock is back to its rebel status of being outside of
Oh,
the
yeah.
system with like, I mean, there are very few rock bands, actual rock bands still in the label system like Christian music.
Yeah,
And
almost none.
almost none. Yeah. And so now they're outside of this system and being, doing what they believe they need to do, and having more impact in the mainstream, I would say, than they have in a very long time. I mean,
Absolutely.
what's your perspective on sort of that mainstream, connection now?
I think it's the natural progression of what was always happening. I mean, I think Christian, like the heavier side of Christian music, has always done better than most at
Yeah.
holding its own in the mainstream market. But I think especially because they speak to subjects that tend to be very, very raw. And it's not that other genres don't do that, but the way that rock does that reaches a certain crowd that most Christian music wouldn't. And so
Right.
because they're thematically in this vein, it's a very natural follow through. And especially now that Christian music as a whole is kind of gravitating towards either worship, so music specifically for church use, or
Yeah.
else it's just music that anybody can listen and enjoy, mainstream or not. Rock, I feel like, is on the front line of that movement that now Christian pop is following in their footsteps and doing the exact same thing. But yeah, the chart movement that we're seeing with bands like even The Protest and Zana in the past couple months is like proof of this, that they're fairly new names to a lot of people, but the mainstream is embracing them because they're talking about stuff that literally anybody can relate to, and their music is so good that people are going to pay attention.
Yeah, and you mentioned the protest. I mean, what are I know they're probably one of your favorite new albums of the year. Like, what are some other bands that have really come into their own in 2018? Like rock. What are some of your favorites that you've been listening to from this year?
Well, it's a slow year, like
Yeah,
undeniably. I
it's
will not say otherwise. But the Zana record that's about to come out is absolutely phenomenal, and I would tell everybody. Zana was the former lead singer of Ilya. She
yes,
released her first solo single a full year ago now, Underneath, which has just been tearing up the radio charts, and the full record is really phenomenal. So that's something that people should look forward to listening to.
okay,
Otherwise, of course, Ledger is the big news of the Christian rock world of
yes,
2018 because this is, a good 6 years coming for her to do a solo project, and she's owned it. I
yeah,
think staying more true to her rock roots than I expected her to. I thought she'd
yeah.
go more worship, but she really embraced the rock thing, and that's been for sure. I think the biggest news of 2018 is that whole thing.
Man, yeah, and that's what we introed with here today, and what's crazy about that is it's how like a really successful show and then there's like a spin-off of it. Like this is
Right, right.
like to call it a spin-off of Skillet sort of demeans it just a little bit, but it kind of is. Like it's like Skillet fans are not going to be disappointed. They're going to
Oh yeah.
get what they've always wanted, which is more Jen Ledger. It's like the supporting character becomes the lead in their new show, and there's
Hmm.
guest appearances by John Cooper, and I love that there's that one song where John's on it, and it's reverse Skillet, and
Yeah, it's like it's flipped.
it's
It's
pretty sweet.
awesome.
How does the Zana album compare to like her Ilya stuff? Is it same vein? Is it next level? I haven't heard it.
I would say it's next level, and that's in part because of the team she had around her. She had Joshua Bertrand from Random Hero doing a lot of the writing and like arranging for her, and he is like a guitar head majorly, like extremely technical and very aware of the technical elements. So he was able to take her ideas and kind of elevate them, I think, in terms of the arrangements of the songs. So the guitar is really phenomenal. The kind of electronic elements they bring in are really phenomenal. But then she still has that dichotomy where she's actually, singing and screaming, which you almost never hear from a female vocalist. Like we haven't had that since Lacey Sturm, really,
Yeah, right.
not at least at this level. So in that way, it definitely references Ilya because she was doing that with them as well. But also, you just hear like kind of like the maturing of her voice too, that she's just like bringing in new dynamics that she hasn't done before. It's really cool.
That's awesome. And it's good to have almost like it almost feels like it's a good year for for female vocals in rock. I mean between those two powerhouses, like those are the two you mentioned. Like
Hmm.
that's pretty notable when when front women have been kind of absent for a while. So that's a
Well,
cool
we've
cool
got
trend too.
Viridia coming too. That's the other one. Viridia is going to be one of the big rock releases. I mean, then they've gone a little bit more electronic with that, but that's coming out this fall also. And that's another case where you have a very, very strong female vocalist leading that. And I love that. I would, a huge, huge fan of seeing more of that all day long.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Rock on Purpose is your new website. It's your new sort of vehicle for talking about. It's not really just Christian rock. I mean, it tends to center there, but it's really well. Talk about what it is and what you're trying to do over there.
Yeah, so my basic idea is, like you said, it's primarily starting with Christian rock, but I'm kind of including anything that feels like music that really matters and is mindful. Like mindful is a word that I had as kind of a core value when I went into creating this, is that I want to highlight music that is doing things that matters in the world. So especially because kind of the Christian versus mainstream line is very blurred in the rock world, because you have bands like Breaking Benjamin where some of the members are believers and some
Yeah.
are not, and you have Memphis Mayfire, who has operated like entirely in the
Yes.
mainstream, but
And
Matty Mullins
Thrice.
is a very dedicated Christian. So you have, yeah, so many, like Thrice,
Yeah.
where you have Dustin Kensrue, who's like a theologian, but
Yeah.
he's fronting this band that operates pretty much entirely in the mainstream market. So because of that, I didn't want to limit myself, and like start putting weird market boundaries on it.
Sure.
So it's very much, I'm just like highlighting any music that's doing something that matters, which might bring in sometimes bands that really surprise people. Um,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be very intentional about having conversations if people have questions about somebody I choose to feature. But it is, I think there's a lot of valuable humanitarian work being done through rock. U2 kind of
Yes.
pioneered that and made that a norm. And now you have bands like Switchfoot, who has their whole foundation, or you have Remedy Drive, who their entire band is
Yes.
a vehicle for justice. So bands like that are some of kind of my guiding examples of the most extreme, best case for what rock can be. And then any band though that is doing that in any way, that's the kind of music I want to focus on. And I expect hip hop is going to get drawn in as we keep going, because hip hop is doing what rock pioneered 20 years ago.
So Rock on
So
Purpose will be a hip hop destination.
there might be some, like, I'm not going to say destination, that might be extreme, but there might be some like cousins brought in
Well,
from our
hey,
hip hop world.
Trevor McNeven. I mean, doing his "I Am the Storm" thing.
Oh
he's been
yeah.
in Manifest. Those are two guys that just sort of are on the teeter totter of rock and hip hop.
Well,
I
you
mean,
even look at 21 Pilots, who started in the rock
yes,
world, and they kind of like cross over to hip hop, and like there's this fusion is very common, I think, that we're seeing. And so it's going to be a very natural thing that some of that is going to bleed over again, especially when you're just talking about mindful music in general, because hip hop is super mindful.
yeah.
So,
I cannot be more excited. You mentioned 21 Pilots for Trench. Like
yes,
they have built this whole cinematic universe around their songs. Like, I mean,
it's
Blurry Face
insane.
was at one level. It seems like Trench is at this completely different, deep symbolism,
Oh yeah.
like level about about depression and spirituality and and negative thoughts and outside demonic garbage and like I cannot wait. I think that's going to be just like Blurryface was the Christian album of the year that is not a Christian album. Like
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I like, I know it's kind of a hype train, but I'm shamelessly aboard that hype train. Like, it's
they've
just, I
earned it.
think they deserve, absolutely. And they have worked so unbelievably hard. Like, I could not respect them enough.
We've got some comments here and lots of Zana fans here and looks like Joel Burris is here. He says, "Yeah, Joshua Bertrand, random hero, getting some love." He also says,
Oh,
"Red
yeah.
Red for War is awesome." I've never heard of Red for War.
That is an album title,
Oh,
Lana's album.
oh, well, there you go. I was like, that sounds like a great band name too, though. I
Hey,
mean,
it could be. I'm not gonna
first there
lie.
was
It's
Red,
pretty legit.
now there's Red for War. What's up with Red? Where have they been? I know. I mean, I feel like since their deluxe edition, they've kind of been quiet. And have you heard much rumbling from those guys?
Oh, well, the big question is if they're gonna stay with the label or go independent, because they released Gone last October, and that was the last one on their contract.
Really?
And they've been saying for the past couple of years, chances are pretty high that they're going to go to an independent model and or a model where they are releasing primarily singles and EPs instead of full records,
Wow.
because they're sensing the shift of the industry. So I would very much expect we're going to be seeing them have a pretty big direction change. And they also are being very intentional about reclaiming kind of the mainstream market impact that they have had in the past and really
Yeah,
intentionally pursuing that.
man, yeah, and I think they can do that just by releasing a Sia covers album. I think that's the
I
next.
mean, I would listen too, is the worst part because that was so good. Like you would not expect it, but
There is an internal debate in my house as to which version is better. I absolutely believe Red's version far and away destroys Sia's version, but that's just me. Of Unstoppable.
I
For
would
those of you who
concur.
don't know, Sia has a song called Unstoppable, and Red covered it and just destroyed it in the best way possible. Uh, I mean, they really did. What's the
Yeah.
best rock show you've seen in the last year? Like, who's doing a good job of putting on a good rock show?
Oh man, that's always like an intense question to answer. I mean, obviously, if you're just going to see like a show, like City Rock Fest is in terms of like the whole tour structure, like
Yeah,
go see that because you have so many really strong live bands on there. Um, like they every single year the lineup is really, really phenomenal.
seems like
As
a
far as
one-stop
bands,
shop, really.
well, exactly. It's,
Yeah.
you know, you've got 4 or 5 bands usually. I don't know obviously what the lineup is going to be for next year, but historically they've really that and that goes back to that's been a huge part of unifying the Christian rock world too. So it's worth supporting just for that factor that it is one of the big players in how Christian rock is existing.
Yeah.
As far as like individual bands, Memphis Mayfire is really good live, just
Really, never
unbelievably
seen
tight
them.
performance. It's so good. I last time I saw them, I was again within the last year. It was at Warped, um, and I want to see them like again play an actual full set. 'Cause it's been a while since I've done that, but it's so worth it. They're just incredible.
Who's a band that's not in the Christian world that really inspires you, that is doing that, that purposeful work that's very inspiring, whether or not, I mean, they have Christians in the band or not. What's one of those bands that really sticks out to you as doing something rocking with purpose?
Well, one of the first things that comes to mind is a band called Nothing More, who has been really big in the past 5 years on mainstream radio. They some of them were originally Christians and their beliefs shifted and they shifted out of the Christian market when that happened. But they do a ton of work with mental health. They have a song called
Mm,
Jenny, and that song was because it was written. The lead singer, his sister has bipolar, and has struggled with addiction, and so they have had this whole massive campaign supporting different mental health organizations and raising awareness and just starting conversations and long, in-depth interviews specifically focused around that issue. And they've just done, I think, a really good job of having that conversation in a healthy way because rock for sure talks about things like mental health and suicide all the time.
that's right.
They don't always do it in the best possible way, but they've been really mindful in doing it in a way that is actually productive and helpful.
That's awesome, and I love that. I mean, would that be a band that would make it onto Rock on Purpose?
They would. I do have to like obviously give like there's some language for anybody watching who's
Yeah,
like, you know, wants like a content warning, obviously use discretion. But they are the kind of band that I'd be comfortable covering, especially because some of their songs really are like they even have a song in their new record that uses the imagery of the 7 deadly sins to talk about like destructive forces in our lives and things like that. So there's a lot there to dig into that I think you know, I'm very much of the all truth is God's truth idea that his truth sneaks in everywhere. And you're going to
yeah,
find that in their music if you dig into it.
that's awesome. Name like 3 or 4 rock albums that will never get old for you. Christian rock albums that you can play at any time and it's never old.
Well, this is a little bit of a challenging, like, I'm like, do I go with like the mainstream ones that people are going to know, or do I like highlight some underrated favorites? And
Whatever's at the top of your list.
well, one of the first ones that comes to mind on the underrated side is Dead Poetics Vices is in my opinion one of the best and most underrated records of the past 20 years. That was from the height of the Tooth and Nail days when they were
Yeah.
just killing it in early 2000s. And another thing, a little fun fact for people, Dead Poetic, the lead singer, is now a graphic designer and he designs merch for everybody from Lady Gaga to 21 Pilots. He has done all the art direction on Trench and Blurry Face.
Whoa.
Shout out to Brandon
That's
Reich.
that's a big deal.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean,
wow.
again, he left Dead Poetic to do more of that kind of thing, and he has absolutely crushed it.
Wow.
But Vices was their last record, and it was, I mean, it makes you sad that it was their last record because it was that good. It was just really, really phenomenal.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Any,
Like
yeah, what else? What else you got?
Anne Berlin Cities. I feel like I'd be remiss to not throw in an Anne
Yes.
Berlin plug there. And Cities is, I know that's kind of like everybody considers it kind of their magnum opus, but for good reason. It's kind of like just the songwriting alone on that record is absolutely unbelievable. Like it just does not get old.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been listening to that literally since it released, and like practically weekly. And it's still not old, over 10 years later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's awesome.
it's a
Yeah.
pretty,
Rest in peace, Amberlyn. I mean, nobody's dead,
indeed.
but you know,
I'm not over it still.
I know.
I never will be.
I know. Come on, Stephen Christian. Right?
I
Your
know.
next worship record, more like Amberlyn. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I would not complain if it was just even worship lyrics to Anne Boleyn songs. Like, I would accept that.
just the same songs, just change the lyrics.
Exactly.
That'd
Just
be
it's
awesome.
like the Christian parody versions, but of his own songs.
Not even mad. We'll go with that. I was looking at some comments here. Cindy Blankenship's here says, "Loving rock on purpose." You've got some
Oh,
fans
hi,
already.
Cindy.
Sounds like there's been a great embrace of this in the rock world. What at the end of the day, what are you trying to do with this? Build community? Are you trying to promote certain artists? All the above? What are you trying to do?
I think I'm really trying to invest back in a community that I have seen do unbelievable good because I believe in investing in this community. It continues to empower the community to keep doing the good it's doing. And I definitely intend for it to be a communal thing. This is not about me talking about the bands I like. This is also inviting other voices in. I already have a couple different people who have contributed, a couple photographers on board, but very,
That's
very
awesome.
much my goal is to have this be a communal thing where we strengthen. Again, we're seeing this reunification in rock, and I want to keep strengthening that and investing back into that and saying we're doing such incredibly good things when we're together. And I have seen that in my personal life, in the lives of my friends, in the lives of strangers, just unbelievable moves of God that I have had the privilege of watching over the past, over a decade I've been involved in this community, and I want
Yeah.
to do anything I can to be a small, tiny part of empowering that to continue. And I've been hugely humbled by how many people have been on board with that.
It's
Like, I
awesome.
could not stress enough how cool it's been to see people who believe in the same kind of things I believe in coming alongside me and saying, "Yeah, this matters. Let's have these conversations and talk about this."
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you still involved with Disciple too? Like you I know you helped out with their social
Yeah,
media and website and stuff for years.
a lot of people don't actually even, I think, know that anymore, but I still help run their street team, the Disciple Alliance. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then also their message boards. I've been a moderator there for many, many, many years.
Do they still
And they're a
have
little
message
quiet.
boards?
They do. They're quieter than they used to be, but they still do have them. And the band members actually read them. In particular, Kevin
Cool.
does. He's done book studies there many times over the years.
Yeah. Any
But
any
so yeah, I'm still
news?
pretty involved there.
Any news on the discipleship disciple? I saw Cindy's Blankenship right there on the comments.
The discipleship.
Discipleship front on disciple. What's going on with those guys?
Well, they just played their first couple sets as the Kevin Young Worship Band at Creation and
What?
Life Fest because they are preparing to release their worship side project, which has been, I think, a long, long time coming. Um, and it was
Wow.
really cool stuff. You can find some of those videos on the Disciple Alliance page if you go look that up. But they were doing originals, and then they did "Reckless Love." They've been known to do for years now, "Forever" by Carrie Job. So they're really
That would
embracing
be
that side.
incredible to hear his voice on
Yes.
those songs. That's is it like Disciples probably gonna just take a little pause while they does a little bit of this and then come back to it? What is?
And they're still working on new Disciple stuff too. Like there's going to be new Disciple music. Probably, I would guess they'll have it out within the next year, year and a half. They are hardcore writing on that too. Like they do not slow down, especially now that they have they're with a label, but it's a unique situation where they have a lot of freedom within that. They're just cranking it out like crazy. Some of the hardest working guys you will ever see. They just super dedicated to what they're doing. So yeah, there's going to be worship and probably new Disciple not too long after that. I'm sure there'll be some breathing room between them, but this does not mean a lack of
Okay,
disciple
good.
continuing to rock.
Yeah, because I mean, good gravy. How they just are machines. They go. I mean, they just keep going. There's
Absolutely.
no end in sight for those guys. So that's awesome. So check it out. It's rockonpurpose.live. Yes.
Correct.
Rockonpurpose.live. You can, if you just want to get your fix of what's going on in Christian and positive and purposeful rock, that's where you will go. My son's watching and he typed in ACDC.
I mean, they are awesome.
Oh man,
I
I mean,
completely agree, London.
he's done some karaoke to that end, and that's funny.
Nice.
Well, it was my wife. On and typed ACD, and I knew it was my son right away. Like,
Right, right.
so check that out, rockonpurpose.live. How can we pray for what you're doing over there?
I would say just to pray that I am really faithful with what I'm given to be wise in playing the long game. It's easy to want to see really quick results or just want to do things that seem flashy, but I want to be really intentional and actually building up with the intention of having it last and be something that matters and is always motivated correctly. And that sometimes means doing things slow, and that sometimes means making decisions that aren't going to make a lot of sense to other people, but I want to be really intentional and faithful to do that. So that would be like my big prayer request is, I guess, for my heart and my wisdom in that.
Well, hey, let's pray for it. And those of you watching, let's do it. God, thanks so much for just for so many different streams of encouragement through music. Thank you for rock. Thank you that that it reaches people in such a profound way. And thank you for this new thing, this new community that Mary's a part of and is led to do. And we just pray for longevity, for vision, and just for a way to unite people. And we thank you for all the purpose that's out there, and just pray that you'd continue to expose it and change people's lives. In Jesus' name, Amen. Well, thank you for helping me punt when we found out Mari was in the Amazon, and
Yeah, thank you.
and we will have her eventually. But this was good. I really wanted to get you on at some point. I'm glad it happened
I'm
nice
for
and
standing
early.
today. Our
And
names are so close.
I
It just made
mean,
sense.
it's one letter different. Uh,
Exactly. I can't even blame you.
and and of course, it's awesome to have you because Mary and I go way back in our T days and until
Way
recently,
back.
and it's cool to see we're moving on to different things kind of in the industry. So of course we'll all be watching to see what happens with Rock on Purpose, and I'm sure we'll have
So
you again, and I'm
appreciated.
sure we'll get some of your favorite artists on here at some point. Cool. Well, thanks, Mary, and thanks to all of you. We will be back
Thank you guys.
tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely. And check it out. You know where to find it. Now it's Rock on Purpose. So tomorrow we've got Zion's Joy. If you've never heard of them, that's okay. They are an independent gospel type group that that has been in the news recently. Apparently, they put a music video up, and Facebook like banned it for a few days until they realized that was kind of a mistake. So I'd love to hear more about what's going on with them, what they're about, maybe why they were, what happened there, and find out. I mean, what's cool is through this, and they're a diverse, multicultural group.